The Cascroft family's monthly dinners were less about food and more about financial peacocking. This evening in the sprawling estate outside Sonoma Valley promised to be especially unbearable. I took my usual seat near the fireplace, quietly observing while my cousins competed to see who could brag the loudest. "Just bought a ranch in Aspen," Elliot drawled, swirling his wine. "Right next to the guy who owns half of Silicon Valley." "Please," scoffed Serena, flipping her designer clutch open with a flourish. "We just closed on a vineyard in Provence. Private access to the Med. You can't even put a price on that kind of view." I hid my smile behind my glass of iced tea. If only they knew Kira had been secretly tracking their shady deals for months. Aunt Vivian's voice cut sharply across the table. "You've been awfully quiet." Elliot leaned in, his faux sympathy dripping. "We were just wondering about your living situation." And there it was. "What about it?" I replied, setting down my glass. "This cramped duplex in Seattle," he said. "Still renting, right?" "The one on Cedar Lane," Serena added, feigning surprise. "Didn't know people our age still rented." I nearly laughed. The Cedar Lane complex was my company's first commercial acquisition under Westvale Holdings, a silent empire I'd built while they mocked me. To them, I was a struggling tenant. In reality, I was the owner. "I like the space," I said evenly. "You're 34, sweetie," Aunt Vivian added with a patronizing smile. "It's time to grow up. Buy something real." "Real? Try a $900 million zero-cents portfolio of multifamily buildings, commercial towers, and yes, Cascroft Plaza, the very property they gathered in monthly 3 months ago. I acquired it discreetly through a private equity arm they'd never trace back to me, using encrypted transactions to stay invisible." "I've managed just fine," I replied. Elliot smirked. "You can't even afford a mortgage." I leaned back and let them talk because soon the lease renewal would come across their desks, and guess whose name would be on the letterhead? A name they'd scorned for years. Dad finally glanced up from his wine glass. Now, Elliot, not everyone's blessed with your sharp instincts." "Kira chose her path," Aunt Vivian chimed in with a sigh, as though I'd disappointed them by not marrying a hedge fund manager or becoming a lifestyle blogger. "They thought I spend my days showing cheap walk-ups to broke grad students barely scraping by on commission check. What they didn't know was that Kira Vale, the family underachiever, was also Westvale Holdings, the anonymous firm quietly snapping up commercial and residential properties throughout the Pacific Northwest for the last 6 months, outbidding their cronies with ruthless precision." "Speaking of property development," Serena interjected with a sparkle in her eye, "have you heard about that situation on Cedar Lane? Some firm bought the entire block. They're going to knock it all down." She added with mock pity, "Guess that little apartment of yours will finally go." I kept my expression neutral. It was the buyer, and I had no intention of tearing anything down. The Cedar Lane complex was a hidden gem. Brick facades, vintage detailing, and rent protections for families who'd lived there for decades. I was deep in a historically respectful renovation, funded by profits I'd redirected from their own mismanaged properties. "Really?" I asked. "Hadn't heard." "Well, of course not," Elliot smirked. "Deals that size are way out of your league." "If you get booted," Aunt Vivian said brightly, "you can always move back into the guest house. We'll help you find something more respectable, maybe even someone respectable." "I'm happy," I said flatly, "and so is my landlord." Serena gave a tight laugh. "You can't live a small life forever, dear. Vale used to mean something in this state." It still did, just not the way they thought. In property development circles, Westvale was synonymous with ethical growth and tenant-first investing, a reputation I'd earned by exposing their shady partners anonymously, the antithesis of my cousin's flashy developments that bulldozed communities for clout. "Actually," Dad said, setting down his glass, "this meeting's partly about business. The board's worried about the new owner of Cascroft Plaza." I tilted my head. "Westvale Holdings bought a majority stake 3 months ago," he said. "No one knows who they are. Possibly a foreign investor." Elliot nodded. Has to be. These tycoons love legacy properties. If only they knew that their feared mystery investor was sitting right here in a thrifted cardigan and scuffed boots, holding evidence of their forged signatures. And now, Dad continued, they're asking tough questions, especially about our accounting practices, creative accounting, like the way Elliot borrowed from the building fund to finance his Aspen retreat, or how Serena labeled her luxury handbags as client engagement expenses, moves I documented with time-stamped emails. I am sure it's nothing serious, Aunt Vivian said, her pearls twitching with unease. The Vale name still means something. That's just it, Dad cut in. This Westvale person doesn't seem impressed by names. They've ordered a full audit. I watched the shift ripple across their faces. Panic tightly veiled behind designer smiles. An audit would uncover more than just questionable expenses. It would crack their whole game wide open, revealing the shell companies I'd already traced to their offshore accounts. Maybe Kira could help, Serena said suddenly, her tone sugary. She works in property development, doesn't she? Maybe she knows someone at the management company. They all turned to me at once. Just like that, I was no longer an embarrassment. I was potentially useful. I mostly work with smaller residential clients, I said smoothly. Nothing on the scale of Cascroft Plaza. For God's sake, Elliot snapped. You can't even help your own family. Mom gave him a warning glance, but her silence said enough. Even Dad was back to scrolling, uninterested in defending me. They had no idea how helpful I was about to be, just not in the way they hoped, with a dossier ready to expose their every lie. Tomorrow morning, Westvale Holdings would release a public statement. Effective immediately, Cascroft Plaza would undergo major operational reform. No more shadow budgets. No more nepotistic contracts. No more charging the building like it was a family credit card. I glanced around the penthouse. Artwork bought with maintenance funds. Couches triple their listed price. Fixtures installed by Serena's husband's firm with bloated invoices, all flagged in my secret audit. Anyway, I said, rising and brushing off my jeans. Some of us have early mornings, Serena smirked. Off to show more rent-controlled studios. I slung my worn leather bag over my shoulder. Inside, the board briefing, legal filings and renovation proposals worth more than anything in this room, plus a burner phone with texts proving their collusion. No, Kira, Aunt Vivian called sweetly. Next time, maybe dress more like a Vale. Appearances matter. I smiled. Don't worry, I said. Tomorrow, I'll look exactly like the Vales expect. They just didn't realize I was already the one running the show, with their secrets locked in my safe. If you've been quietly rooting for Kira all along, don't miss what happens when the boardroom doors open. Subscribe to the channel, so you're the first to see how the family reacts when they realize the nobody they dismissed now holds the keys to everything. The next morning, I stood in my real office, an entire penthouse floor overlooking downtown Seattle, and prepared for the moment I'd planned for over 6 months, with a hidden camera ready to capture their downfall. My assistant, Ela, walked in briskly, setting a cappuccino beside my laptop. The Cascroft Plaza board is already seated, she said. Your family got here early trying to charm the independent members. I smirked, imagining Elliot and Serena working the room in desperation. Audit packets all printed and distributed. The forensic team uncovered even more than expected, including a forged lease I'd planted to trap them. She paused. Are you sure you want to go through with this? Once they know, there's no turning back. They need to learn, I said quietly, that legacy isn't a license to abuse power. I turned to the glass, catching my reflection. Gone were the jeans and cardigan. Today I wore a deep navy Altusara suit. Sharp lines, soft strength. The kind of look Aunt Vivian used to dream I'd wear to meet a husband. Instead, I'd wear it to dismantle their house of cards. The ownership announcement goes live in 20 minutes, Ela added. Once it hits, you'll be unmasked. Then let's begin, I said, picking up my briefcase, loaded with duplicate files in case they tried to destroy the originals. The Cascroft Plaza boardroom hushed as I entered. My family was clustered at the far end, unnerved, underdressed, and visibly rattled.
"Who are you?"
Elliot barked.
"This is a private meeting."
I calmly placed my briefcase at the head of the table. "I'm Kira Vale," I said, "founder and sole owner of Westvale Holdings, the company that owns this building and several others your family leveraged illegally, with proof I've held for months." Aunt Vivian turned ghost white. Serena's lips parted but no sound came. My father's hands tightened on his pen.
"Kira,"
he breathed. I nodded. "Good morning." I opened the briefcase and began sliding audit reports across the table. "Shall we review your financials?"
"This is insane,"
Elliot stammered. You're just..." "What?" I asked. "The black sheep, the renter, the woman in consignment clothes." Serena blinked. "But you show apartments." "I work," I said simply. "And I built something real with integrity, not illusion." The board watched, stunned, as the proud Vale family began to unravel one page at a time. "These folders," I said, "contained detailed documentation of every misused fund, inflated invoice, and falsified receipt, cross-checked by my private investigator. Reports of financial irregularities involving Cascroft Plaza's accounts." I began distributing the final set of documents. "Elliot, would you care to explain the $1 million 0 cents in roof repairs that financed your Aspen property?" He flushed so hard and fast I thought he might pass out. "Or, Serena," I continued, flipping the next page, "maybe you'd like to walk us through your husband's invoices, charging 3 times the market rate for basic plumbing, backed by emails you thought you'd deleted. You'd air out your own family's laundry like this." Aunt Vivian gasped. "No," I said evenly. "You aired it out. I'm just making sure it gets cleaned." Dad finally spoke, voice low and pleading. "Kira, sweetheart, we can explain." "Don't," I said, raising a hand. "I've watched this family treat our great-grandfather's legacy like a personal ATM. While you mocked my so-called humble life, I was building something better on values, not vanity." "But why?" Serena asked, dazed. "Why pretend to be struggling?" "I didn't pretend anything," I replied. "I lived modestly. I invested wisely." "You assumed wealth had to be loud. The Cedar Lane building," Elliot said, stunned. "You really live there?" "I own it," I corrected. "And most of the block. And no, I'm not demolishing it because some of us care about people, not just returns, unlike your gentrified disasters." Suddenly, phones around the table buzzed. One board member looked up, reading from his screen. "Westvale Holdings reveals CEO's identity. Kira Vale, a strange member of the Vale family, confirmed as owner of $1 billion 0 cents real estate portfolio." Serena fumbled her phone. "Ranked among top ethical developers," she muttered. "Historic preservation, tenant protections. This will ruin us," Serena whispered. Pale. "No," I said firmly. "This will save you from yourselves. Effective today, Cascroft Plaza will operate transparently. No more shell games, no more sweetheart contracts, and I've got the receipts to enforce it." "And if we don't comply?" Elliot tried to sound bold, but his voice trembled. He smiled. "Then I'll pass these reports to the authorities. I'm sure the IRS would find them enlightening." Silence thickened. "What do you want?" Dad finally asked. "I want you to remember what the Vale name meant before all this." I met their eyes one by one. "Great-grandfather built communities, not just profit margins." I stood gathering my papers. "You have a choice. Work with me to restore that legacy," I said evenly. "Or find somewhere else to live. I hear there's some lovely rentals in Lake Otsego." I turned to leave. "Kira, wait." Dad's voice stopped me just as I reached the door. I was wrong about you." "Yes," I replied quietly. "You were?" The aftermath unfolded like something out of a business drama. The media couldn't get enough of the hidden A's of Seattle, who'd quietly built a real estate empire and dismantled her family's illusions in one board meeting, with leaked footage amplifying the scandal. Aunt Vivian resigned from 3 local boards, too ashamed to show her face. Serena's husband's firm folded within weeks of the audit release, but not all of it was bitter. Arrested, finally facing actual consequences, enrolled in a public university's property development program, Serena began volunteering at a transitional housing shelter downtown, a move I quietly funded to give her a chance at redemption. She told me later it gave her more purpose than her gallery openings ever had. And Dad, he asked to learn the business, not as a father reclaiming control, but as a student. This time, he wanted to understand what I'd built. 3 months later, I was sitting in my Cedar Lane apartment. Yes, I kept it. Reviewing new quarterly reports. Pascroft Plaza was thriving. Leases were stable, tenant satisfaction was up, and small retailers on the ground floor were turning healthy profits. A knock broke my focus. I opened the door to find my mother. She wore jeans and no makeup. It took me a moment to process the casualness. "I got your invitation," she said, holding it up. "A courtyard holiday party," I nodded. "It's not quite your scene." "No," she admitted, glancing around my modest space. "But I'm learning that maybe scene isn't everything." She picked up a photo, me at 23, beaming at my property development license ceremony. "I never asked," she said. "Why this path?" "Because I wanted to build something real," I replied. "Not just buy it and flaunt it." "And now," she murmured, "you control more than all of us." "I do," I nodded. "But control isn't the goal. Purpose is." She looked at me seriously. "Will you teach me?" "Come tonight," I said. "Meet the families who've lived here for decades. Listen. That's where legacy begins." Later, I stood by my window, watching lights twinkle across Seattle, a city now whispering my name in awe. This city I'd quietly made mine. Pascroft Plaza glowed in the distance, no longer a monument to greed, but a symbol of restoration. Below me, the Cedar Lane building buzzed with quiet life. Brickwork, original wood beams, and garden courtyards were preserved with care. My phone pinged with new messages, partnership offers, speaking invitations, acquisition deals. Westvale Holdings was in high demand now. But I kept my schedule humane, my routine grounded. Success to me wasn't about outshining my past, it was about building something that mattered, something that would last. Sometimes the person they pity becomes the one they must learn from, and sometimes the best kind of triumph doesn't roar, it endures. A week later, at the Cedar Lane holiday party, I stood by the garden fountain, watching my family acclimate to a world they once dismissed. Mom sat beside Mrs. Lopez, a tenant here for 38 years, listening with genuine interest. Elliot helped string lights with Mr. Keller, a World War II veteran and longest-term resident. Serena laughed beside a table of kids icing sugar cookies. Slowly, they were learning. Real wealth isn't in what you can flaunt, it's in what you preserve, what you share, what you elevate. Dad joined me near the cocoa table. "You know," he said, "your great-grandfather believed buildings should shelter hearts, not just wallets." I nodded. I found his old ledgers, handwritten notes about protecting tenants. We forgot that. He looked at me, not like a daughter who'd gone off track, but like someone who'd carried the torch he'd dropped. "You could have ruined us." "Never the point," I said, watching a little girl twirl under the fairy lights. I wanted to build something that would outlast me. And sometimes the greatest success isn't in proving them wrong. It's in offering them a better version of right. If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or quietly counted out, then maybe you see a little of yourself in me. I didn't set out to prove anyone wrong. I just wanted to build something real, something that couldn't be taken away because it was rooted in values, not vanity. If my story moved you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below. What would you have done in my shoes? What have you built in silence while others doubted you? Let's talk about it. Let's give each other credit for the quiet work, the long nights, the tough choices. And if you're facing a moment like I once did, when the world expects nothing from you, don't shout louder. Just build stronger. You don't need approval to begin, you need purpose and consistency. The rest will come. Support this journey by subscribing to the channel. There are more stories ahead about resilience, redemption, and redefining success on your own terms. Because legacy isn't what you inherit, it's what you create. And sometimes the best revenge is not revenge at all. It's becoming exactly who they said you couldn't be. So, subscribe, stay with me, and let's build something that lasts.